In the last video, we set up the inputs for our individual items, whether it's an individual note or an individual to-do. In this video, we're going to start wiring up those inputs to actually do their job. Now, part of this is going to be very easy. We know we're going to set up an event listener. For the remove button, for example, we'll use the click event. And when someone clicks it, what do? We remove something from an array. We already know how to do all of that. What's going to be a little trickier, and the reason that this video exists at all, is that we're going to need to figure out which item was the item the user interacted with. So for example, right here, something to do, I could go ahead and add another one, thing to. And let's say that I clicked the delete button next to the last item, so the second thing too. How are we going to target this item and remove it? I can't target it by its to-do text because we have multiple items with the same to-do text. And I also can't say, well, it's just the third one, because what if I was to filter like this? Now it's the second one. If I were to use that same logic here and say, okay, it's the second one, we would end up deleting the wrong thing. Because remember, our actual to-dos array contains all of the unfiltered and unsorted data. So what we're going to focus on doing is giving each item, each note, or each to-do a unique identifier. If you've ever worked with a database before, this is going to be something that you're already familiar with. Each one is going to have an identifier that completely and uniquely identifies it. That's going to allow us to use this ID to target these specific items. So we're not going to have to worry about whether or not we have two notes with the same title or two to-dos with the same to-do text. To actually generate these IDs, we're going to be using a third-party library, our very first one. Third-party libraries are nothing more than JavaScript code that somebody else wrote. Right now, all of the code that makes up our application is code that we wrote. In here, we create functions and we take advantage of core JavaScript features, various function and method calls, like setAttribute or appendChild. When we introduce a third-party library into the mix, they're going to expose even more functionality to solve these specific but common problems. So the idea of generating a unique identifier is by no means specific to a to-do app, a note app, or pretty much any application. So we don't need to worry about writing the code to get that done because it's super complex. All we need to do is know that we need to solve the problem of generating a unique ID. We find a library that allows us to do that, we implement it, and we can focus on building out features specific to our apps, not features that you'd see in pretty much every web app out there. So we don't need to waste time reinventing the wheel. Instead, we can use this third-party library to solve our problems and quickly get back to improving the core functionality of our apps. So third-party libraries are fantastic. Everybody is using them. People always ask, are they reliable? Should I be using them? Think about any big company out there. Just start naming them. Walmart, Netflix, all of these companies, they're releasing these libraries. They're using other people's libraries. There's a rich ecosystem of open source code that's freely shared and distributed to solve these common problems. So over in the browser, we're going to search for GitHub UUID. UUID stands for Universally Unique Identifier. This is the library that we're going to be using, Node UID, to solve this problem. Now, Node UID is an old name from when this library actually only supported a Node version of the script. These days, we can use it in the browser too. So this is going to allow us to solve our problem. Down below on this GitHub page, we can see all of the code for this project. You can actually go in and view all of the lines. Down below that, we have our documentation, and there are a few different ways to get started. We're using this in the browser, so we want to start with the browser-ready versions. Now, there are a few different versions of the UUID algorithm. The most recent version isn't necessarily the best version. They're all different ways to generate a unique ID, and we're going to be going with version 4. Version 4 being the random one, not relying on some sort of namespace or some sort of timestamp. So don't worry about what I just said. All you have to know is that we are going to add this script tag into the file. We are going to call this function, and that's going to return a unique identifier that we can use for each item. So let's go ahead and do this for the Notes application. I'm going to take this script tag and copy it right from the website. Over inside of Visual Studio Code, I'm going to close down the To-Do app files, and we'll kick open the Notes application files. We got our index.html, our app.js, and Notes functions. Now I do want to toss the script tag in here, and I'm going to add it before any of the files that we've created. This is typically what we do with our JavaScript libraries. We want to use the functionality that is created in this file in our other files, so it needs to come first. Now we could actually go ahead and take this URL, copy it, paste it into the browser, and open up whatever that link is. And right here, what you can see is an optimized set of JavaScript code. So it's been squished all onto one line, and you can see that it's very hard to read. It's not meant to be human readable. It's meant to be faster, smaller being faster. It's going to load a little quicker when the browser has to go off and actually fetch this file from another server. Hey, it's Andrew here with a quick interruption. I've noticed there's a temporary outage with the Wizard-in service, and I'm going to guess it's going to be back online by the time this course launches, but in case it's not, I want to offer up an alternative way you can get that file into your program. This is by heading over to links.mead.io/UUIDv4. If you go to this URL, it is going to redirect you through to a much longer, harder to type URL, and on this page, I have backed up the JavaScript file we just explored. Down below, we have that file, and if we click raw, what do we see? We see exactly what we had before. Now, technically, you could take this URL and use that as the script source attribute. You could also just take the content here, copy this into a brand new JavaScript file, and then load that local file in instead. So either way you want to go, this backup is available in case the service is down. All right, that is it for this quick interruption. Let's jump back into the regular video. Now to figure out how this works, we don't look at the code, we look at the documentation. And right here, we can see we have access to a single function, UUIDv4. So let's go ahead and call it now that we've loaded in the script and see what we get. I'm going to just add a call to it inside of our notes functions file. Let's just add it up at the very top to mess around with this function. I'm going to console.log whatever comes back from UUIDv4. I call it as a function, and there are no arguments to pass in. Let's go ahead and save all of our files. The browser should restart, and we'll check out what we get in the terminal. What do we get over here? Inside of the console, we get our unique identifier. So here it starts with 85541. If I were to refresh the page and generate a new one, you can see we have a completely different unique identifier. So every single time we call that function, we're going to get a unique ID, and that's great because we're going to use it when we actually create our new notes. So let's go ahead and do just that. I'm going to remove that usage, and we're going to move to the location where we actually add things onto that array. That's inside of the Notes app file. Down below, we have a push call. This is where we push on each new note with the title and body properties. We're going to be adding a new property into the mix right here. That is going to be the ID property. Each note is going to have an ID, and we are going to set the ID equal to a new unique identifier. So I'll call it UUIDv4 again right here. And then I'll toss a comma so we can move on to the next line and set up the next property. So at this point, all newly created notes are going to have that ID, and we can test our work by wiping all of the local storage data, adding some new items in, and viewing the results. Over in the Storage tab, I'm just going to go ahead and right-click things and click Delete All to remove all of the data. And if I refresh the page, we should now have no notes. I'll click Create Note a couple of times. Then we can actually click the data to view it, and down below, we can view the parsed data. This just makes it really easy to open and close the various pieces of our information. Right here, we have our array. Our first object starts with 76, the second object starts with FF, and the last one starts with 04. So all of the notes we created now have this unique identifier. We're going to be able to use that unique identifier to target it. For the Notes app, in this case, to delete it. We'll wire up the actual removal in the next video. For now, what I want you to do is set up unique IDs for the to-dos as well. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to start by deleting all of the existing to-dos. Then you're going to load in the library, just like we did for the Notes application. And then finally, when you actually create the new to-do, that part of the code needs to change. You want to set up the ID property with the unique ID right there. Then just test your work, add a few new to-dos into the mix, and view the data in local storage, making sure that each one has a completely unique ID property. Take some time to knock this one out, pause the video. When you're done, come back and click play. How'd that one go? That one should have been pretty easy. Let's go ahead and knock this out. The first thing I'm going to do is take that script tag and copy it to the clipboard because we are going to need it for the other HTML file. Now I'll close down all of these files and open up the ones for the to-do application. And what we're going to do is modify first up the HTML file, tossing the script tag that loads in the library up at the top. And the next thing that we're going to do is call that function, the function that's only available because this file sets it up. If it wasn't for this file, UUID v4 would fail because it's not defined anywhere. It is not part of the JavaScript language. Now over here, this is where we push on new to-dos. All I wanted you to do is add on a new ID property. You could have put it at the bottom, but I'm going to put it up at the top. Either way works. Right here, ID equals UUID v4. I'm going to call it as a function since it is one, and I'll toss a comma at the end since we are adding other object properties down below. Now we can actually test that things are working over inside of the browser. I'm going to start by deleting all of the data I currently have. This data does not have the ID property. I'll delete all, give things a quick refresh, and now we're going to be able to actually add some new to-dos in. So I'll say 1, 2, 3, and then we can check out the data over here. If I check out this value and use escape to close the console, giving me just a bit more space, we should be able to expand each one. We start with 582 for the first one, 488 for the second one, and for our last one, 0EB. So there we go. We now have unique identifiers for everything we create. This is going to make it so much easier to track the data, even when the data has shared attributes. For example, when we have two to-dos with the exact same to-do text. Using this ID to do something meaningful is what we're going to cover in the next video. For now, let's just take a quick moment to recap what we did, because we did do something important. We used our very first third-party JavaScript library. This is going to make it super easy to solve common problems without having to reinvent the wheel. So generating something like a unique ID is something that thousands of developers out there need to do. There is no reason for us to all write and maintain the code necessary to get that done when there are well-created, highly tested libraries out there. This one being used by literally hundreds of thousands of different applications. We can be pretty sure that what it does is going to be way more reliable and foolproof than anything that we could create. Now, this can take a little getting used to. It can be a little weird to be using a lot of other folks' code inside of your project, but it is a core part of the JavaScript ecosystem, and don't worry, you'll get comfortable with it in no time when you see how much time it can save you. In this case, we used the UUID library. We were able to add it into the mix by just adding a script tag into our index.html file. From there, we were able to take advantage of anything it exposed. As we saw in the documentation, the only thing it really gave us was a UUID v4 function, which returns that unique ID. That's where we're going to stop for this one. We're going to wire up those inputs in the next one, so stay tuned, and I'll see you then.